In the shadows of modern thought looms an unsettling idea: nihilism. The belief that life lacks inherent meaning, purpose, or value. The word itself often evokes feelings of dread, emptiness, or rebellion. Yet behind its bleak veneer lies a complex and evolving philosophy that has shaped literature, politics, art, and individual psychology for over 2 centuries. The term nihilism is derived from the Latin word nihil, meaning nothing. It gained traction in 19th century Europe, especially in Russia and Germany, where it was first used as a critique of emerging radical and revolutionary ideologies. Ivan Turgenev, in his 1862 novel Fathers and Sons, used the term to describe a new generation that rejected all established authority, tradition, and belief. His character Bazarov epitomized the nihilist, a young, scientifically minded man who believes in nothing but empirical truth. But nihilism did not stop at political or social rebellion. It soon evolved into a more profound philosophical challenge. If all values are human constructions, can any value be said to be objectively true? Can morality, truth, or purpose exist without an ultimate ground?
Philosophical nihilism can be broken into several categories, each tackling different domains of meaning. Metaphysical nihilism branch argues that not only is there no inherent meaning in life, but that reality itself may not truly exist in any meaningful or objective sense. In extreme forms, metaphysical nihilism even entertains the idea of an empty, possible world, a world where nothing exists at all. Moral nihilism, also called amoralism, claims that no moral principles are inherently right or wrong. From this perspective, notions like good, evil, justice, or rights are merely social constructs or illusions. While this does not necessarily lead to hedonism or cruelty, it challenges the legitimacy of all ethical systems. Existential nihilism is perhaps the most famous and emotionally resonant form. Existential nihilism states that life itself is without purpose, value, or meaning. French philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre didn't call himself a nihilist, but his existentialist work flirted with its themes. Man is nothing else but what he makes of himself. Without God or cosmic design, each individual must confront a void and create their own meaning. Epistemological nihilism is the denial that we can know anything with certainty. Truth becomes elusive or non-existent. If all knowledge is filtered through subjective lenses or flawed sensory perception, what can we really claim to know?
No discussion of nihilism is complete without Friedrich Nietzsche, the 19th century German philosopher who diagnosed the West as being on the brink of spiritual crisis. In The Gay Science, Nietzsche famously declared, "God is dead." But he didn't mean this literally. He meant that belief in the Christian God, or in any ultimate source of meaning, was no longer credible in the age of science and secularism. This cultural shift, he warned, would lead to nihilism. Nietzsche saw nihilism as a transitional phase, a necessary destruction of old values before the creation of new ones. He feared that without religion, people would either fall into despair or embrace comforting illusions like nationalism, consumerism, or mass ideologies. His concept of the Übermensch represented an individual who creates their own values and lives with passionate authenticity despite the void. Nietzsche did not advocate for passive resignation. Instead, he called for a revaluation of all values, a life-affirming philosophy that embraces the tragic nature of existence. His proposed antidote to nihilism was the will to power, the creative force to impose meaning onto a meaningless universe. While Nietzsche was wrestling with nihilism in philosophical terms, Russia experienced it as a political movement. In the late 19th century, Russian nihilists became synonymous with radical revolutionaries who rejected Tsarist authority, orthodox religion, and traditional family structures. Thinkers like Sergei Nechayev believed that only through total destruction of the current system could a new world be born. His Catechism of a Revolutionary advocated total devotion to revolution, even if it meant embracing violence and deception. Dostoevsky's Demons, also translated as The Devils or The Possessed, is a chilling fictional account of these ideologies gone mad. Through his characters, Dostoevsky warned that nihilism could lead not only to political chaos, but to moral collapse. The 20th century bore witness to the horrors of two world wars, the Holocaust, and the atom bomb, events that deeply challenged Enlightenment ideals of progress and reason. For many, these atrocities validated nihilistic anxieties. What kind of civilized world could produce such barbarity? In literature, thinkers like Albert Camus responded with absurdism, a close cousin of nihilism. In The Myth of Sisyphus, Camus writes that the only real philosophical question is whether life is worth living. Confronted with the absurd, our search for meaning in a silent universe, Camus proposes revolt, to live passionately even in the face of meaninglessness. Authors like Franz Kafka, Samuel Beckett, and even George Orwell explored themes of alienation, futility, and institutional meaninglessness in their works. Meanwhile, postmodern philosophy, example Jacques Derrida, Michel Foucault, often deconstructed traditional ideas of objective truth and stable identity, echoing nihilistic tendencies. Modern entertainment frequently revisits nihilistic themes, often with a dark sense of humor. The Coen brothers, The Big Lebowski, features antagonists who are literally called nihilists, who proclaim, "We believe in nothing, Lebowski." The character of Rick from Rick and Morty also embodies existential nihilism, a brilliant but deeply cynical scientist who treats morality, love, and society as cosmic jokes. Even superhero films like The Dark Knight invoke nihilism through villains like the Joker, who thrives on chaos and insists that everything burns. Nihilism here becomes not just a philosophy, but a force of disorder, an enemy of structure and coherence.
Many thinkers have criticized nihilism for being overly pessimistic or self-defeating. If nothing matters, why write, think, or act? Some argue that nihilism is a psychological trap, an excuse to avoid responsibility or engagement. Others point out that nihilism can become a new dogma. In trying to deny all meaning, it can end up asserting its own kind of certainty, that no meaning is possible. This is sometimes referred to as passive nihilism, as opposed to Nietzsche's vision of active nihilism, a rejection that clears the ground for new creation. Religious philosophers see nihilism as a symptom of spiritual decline. Thinkers like G.K. Chesterton and C.S. Lewis warned that abandoning faith leads not to liberation, but to moral disorientation and despair. On the other hand, existentialists like Sartre and humanists argue that life's lack of inherent meaning frees us to create our own. In a world without divine purpose, human creativity, solidarity, and responsibility become even more important. For some, nihilism is not just a philosophical stance, but an emotional state, often linked to depression, anxiety, or existential crisis. Feelings of emptiness, lack of motivation, or disconnection can stem from internalizing nihilistic ideas without finding a path forward. This is why many therapists, especially in existential psychology, work with clients to explore their values, sources of meaning, and personal narratives. Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, developed logotherapy, a form of therapy based on the belief that humans are motivated by a will to meaning. His work, Man's Search for Meaning, argues that even in the worst suffering, people can find purpose. In the internet age, nihilism takes on new forms. Online spaces often blend irony, detachment, and dark humor in ways that reflect a kind of cultural nihilism. Memes like "nothing matters" or "we're all gonna die anyway" are tossed around casually, half serious and half joking. For younger generations facing climate crisis, economic instability, and social fragmentation, this attitude can be both coping mechanism and critique. Movements like climate nihilism or doomerism express despair over systemic inaction. But again, this despair can spark its opposite. From environmental activism to mutual aid communities, some people respond to the void not with withdrawal, but with commitment. If nothing is guaranteed, then everything depends on what we choose to value.
Nihilism confronts us with uncomfortable questions. What if there is no ultimate purpose? What if morality is subjective? What if the universe is indifferent? But rather than signaling defeat, these questions can also be a beginning. Nietzsche called nihilism both a danger and a possibility, the death of old gods, but also the dawn of new creation. In the end, nihilism need not be a life-denying force. It can be a call to take ownership of our beliefs, to live with eyes wide open, and to build meaning in the very act of living. Or, as Camus put it, the struggle itself toward the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. If you're enjoying the content, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more awesome videos.